it's really good to see such a big turnout from everyone. This session today is obviously we're going to be looking at trauma-informed practice. This session will not make you an expert. You have to have many years training in order to do this and in different therapies. What it will do is make you more aware, hopefully, than you were before, give you different techniques that you can be using and different resources that you can tap into. As always, at the end of the session, you'll be sent an email link in order to get a copy of the presentation and a copy of all of the slides. So you will have all of this. You'll also notice that I've deliberately used quite a few diagrams in this presentation, and you can pick which ones suit the way you work within your home to inform your staff and to work with your young people. There'll be time for questions at the end, but I will give gaps throughout. If you, if you've got a burning question, then please put it in the chat. And sorry, I've got quite a few people waiting to come in now. Everybody should be in now. And can I just remind you to mute yourselves during the presentation so that we don't hear what is happening in your homes? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I think what I'm going to do is hope that Liam or Ali will admit anybody else that comes, because we now have 87 people here already, and more still arriving. So I'm going to leave further admissions to Ali and Liam. Is that okay with you two?
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you, so that I can get on with the presentation. All right, let's double check with everybody. Can you all see the screen? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Right.
Yes.
Thank you. What I said before was this presentation in 2 hours, I can't make you a skilled practitioner, but what we can do together is look at what the messages are around trauma informed practice, look at ways of working, and look at how we use it practically now in our work, because a good part of what we do is not just about working with our young people, but making sure that we record it clearly and record what is happening so that we're informing our young people about their development. And it's something they can read now, perhaps look back on. And it's also something that if someone, for example, Ofsted or our Reg 44 visitors, for those of us in children's homes, can look and see that we know what we're doing, that we're clear on what we're doing and why. Okay. As I said before, I've deliberately used different slides to repeat different messages so that you can take out the ones that feel most comfortable for you to use within the ethos of your homes, and which you recognise your staff have got the skills to use and that benefit your young people. So let's have a look first of all at an adaptation of the Venn diagram. The crappy childhood, from wounds to patterns. If you have a look at this, I'm not going to read all of these out for you, but you can see that the impact that some of these things have on our children when they're little, when they're growing up, and when they come into independence and adulthood. And it's things that impact them throughout their lives. So if you look at codependence, for example, and that's often with a parent who may have a lot of issues of their own, the hidden harm element around substance misuse, mental health issues, domestic violence, and so on, that all links in for our children. And all of this crosses together. As I said, I'm not going to read all of this out, but this is for you to look at and for you to use if you want to in future. because the background to what we're doing around trauma-informed practice is linked with what the government has been saying for a while now, because they issued very clear guidance, because a number of people have come forward to look at this and we can see where it works. And what the government guidance says is that trauma-informed approaches have become increasingly cited in policy and adopted in practice as a means for reducing the negative impact of trauma experiences and supporting mental and physical health outcomes. So they built on evidence developed over several decades. But there's been a lack of consensus, hasn't there? Because it depends on where you've been in order to do this. I've had more than one kind of trauma training, if you like. I've trained in Britain and I've trained in the States. And it's looking at how we link those together and which ones are best. So the DFE issued a document where they were seeking to address this gap by providing a working definition of trauma-informed practice for all of us working in both the health and care sector. And the working definition presented reflects the original internationally recognised definition, which was developed in America under their Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And the evidence base for that explored the use of trauma-informed practice in different settings. It's still being developed, but this working definition will be kept under review and updated where appropriate to reflect new evidence. So at the moment, this is the one we're working to. This is the one that seems to be working best for people and is being used internationally in order to make that difference. So the definition itself, the ones that they're saying, is trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as harmful or life-threatening. While it's unique to the individual, generally, the experience of trauma can cause lasting adverse effects, limiting the ability to function and achieve mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. And trauma can affect individuals, groups, and communities. So, trauma-informed practice, therefore, is an approach to health and care interventions which is grounded in the understanding that trauma exposure can impact on an individual's neurological development. So when we look at that, it may be that one person's trauma impacts on the other people around them, people that have witnessed it, people that have witnessed the pain that that person is suffering. So it could be a child who is really sort of suffering at home, goes into school and is so desperately unhappy and sad and crying to a teacher that the teacher can feel really bad by their trauma as well. So trauma spreads, it's like a ripple effect, but the immediate impact is on that individual in their own unique way. Siblings in a family can experience trauma in different ways. They could be having the same event happening around them, but they experience it differently depending on who they are. And it's about us making sure that we're clear on what the individual's trauma is. Recognizing the signs and symptoms can be a hard one, because sometimes, often with teenagers, some of the behaviors can be just being teenagers or being involved in something else. But very often, what has happened to a teenager as a child is what's impacting them. If you think when you're getting a new admission to your home, whether it be a children's home or a 16+ provision, a supported accommodation provision, and you get like a 15 or a 16-year-old lad, 6 foot tall, sort of built, big shoulders, walking in the door, and they're walking in potentially really cross, they're walking in with all their defenses up and they're ready to challenge you. You need to kind of step away in your mind and look at them as a 6-year-old. Imagine that boy as a little boy. Imagine him facing some of the things he may have had to face. And if you can start to do that and you can start to see the child inside the big boy's body, then you can start to understand what some of the trauma is that they've experienced over the years. So trauma-informed practice then aims to increase practitioners, so our awareness of how trauma can negatively impact on individuals and communities, and their ability to feel safe or develop trusting relationships with health and care services and their staff. It aims to improve the accessibility and quality of services by creating culturally sensitive, safe services. And that's really important, that they are safe and cultural, so that people want to use them. They want to come in and see us. They want to work with us. They want to live in our homes because they feel that you are going to keep them safe and allow them to make sense of what has happened as a child. Can I remind you, if you're going to be chatting with each other, just mute your microphones. Thank you. So what it does, trauma-informed practice, is it seeks to prepare practitioners, so all of us, to work in collaboration and partnership with people and empower them to make choices about their health and well-being. But as a result of trauma, young people may not understand who they can trust. If they can't trust the people that are supposed to love them best and keep them safe, and that's parents, family members, immediate people that are around them, why should they trust professionals? Somebody who's paid to care for them makes it even harder for them. And trauma-informed practice acknowledges the need to see beyond an individual's presenting behaviours and to ask, what does this person need, rather than what is wrong with this person? And very often that's what happens, isn't it? When you're developing your first risk assessments or your first care plans and support plans, when young people are moving in, we're looking at what is wrong, and what we should be saying to ourselves is, what do they need? What do they need in order for them to be able to grow, in order to be able to develop and thrive, and to move into happy adulthood at some point? So, for example, rather than, if somebody is acting out or demanding, rather than calling it attention-seeking behaviour, think of it as attention-needing behaviour. And if you just flip that switch in your head constantly, then we won't view people negatively. We'll be starting to look at what their needs are right from the start, all of our young people. Okay. So I like this diagram because, and there's another one very similar, where you can look at how, because trauma doesn't just impact our young people as they're growing, it can sometimes impact on our staff because they've been through their own trauma growing up. So there's different ways that we can react. So your flight type, somebody who is constantly wanting to escape from something, chronic rushing, avoids conflict, avoids difficult emotions, feels trapped easily, has racing or obsessive thoughts, doesn't like being still, can't rest, relax, has trouble sleeping, works or studies excessively, always seems distracted, doesn't enjoy downtime, can be prone to addiction, is hypervigilant and jumpy, and leans on perfectionism to avoid criticism. Now, very often somebody may say, okay, there's some of the symptoms of ADHD. And so people potentially will be looking to get diagnosed and medicated. And actually, there's a lot of, it could be linked with their early trauma, and they're trying to make sense of what's going on. So they run away from things. Your fight type, somebody who can be confrontational, perpetuates arguments, is prone to self-sabotage, tries to prove they're right all the time, has impulsivity and hypersensitivity, gets defensive quickly, may yell or be loud to self-assert, feels shameful after outburst, tends to start fights, likes to be the leader, has an unpredictable temper, has issues with authority, and it's easily reactive. I'm not going to be political, but there's a lot of politicians I can think of who are in the fight type. And that's how they go through their lives. Okay, so what we want, if our young people are coming to us and they're trapped in one of those, fight or flight, and they feel that all the time because they're trying to make sense of their trauma, what's happened to them, and how they can move forward, they come to us in our homes. They come to us in supported accommodation. They come to us in our children's homes. And what they need from us is to be safe people. We're people that can respect boundaries, are consistently honest. We can admit to our faults, want to grow, to do better, can apologize, change behavior, genuinely happy for others, open communication and connection, takes responsibility for actions, are sympathetic, empathetic, no desire to control others, reliable and consistent, and encourages self-growth. And that's the kind of people that we're hoping that our children can grow into, our young people can grow into, and that our staff are, and that we are. On the other side, unsafe people violates boundaries, lies consistently, refuse to communicate, apologizes without changing. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, you're right. But actually inside doesn't mean a thing. Excessive flattery and love bombing, enjoys belittling or hurting others, won't take accountability, gaslights, manipulates, refuses to grow change, isolates from others, controlling behavior, always defensive. And very often our young people, because they're desperate to belong, can find themselves in relationships with unsafe people in that way. Does all of this make sense so far?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Absolutely, yes.
Good. So what we need to do is to prevent re-traumatisation. Remember what I said right at the beginning? This training won't make us experts, but it will open the doors for us to make sense of what it is that we're doing and how trauma can impact on our children. But what we don't want to do is re-traumatise them. We don't want to put them all through that again. So trauma-informed practice seeks to avoid re-traumatisation, which is the re-experiencing of thoughts, feelings, or sensations experienced at the time of a traumatic event or circumstance in a person's past. It doesn't mean that they don't have therapy, they don't have the right talking therapies that they can go to that will make sense of them. But what it doesn't do is like poke and prod, you know, like at a boil or at a cut. Sort of, if you know, with children very often they'll get a scab on their arms and they'll pick it and then it starts to bleed again. We don't want to do that to our children. So re-traumatization is generally triggered by reminders of previous trauma, which may or not be potentially traumatic in themselves. So the purpose of trauma-informed practice, the purpose of what we're doing today, is not to treat trauma-related difficulties, which is the role of trauma specialist services and practitioners. Instead, it seeks to address the barriers that people affected by trauma can experience when accessing health and care services. So we're looking at making sure that we, as practitioners with our children on a daily basis, are able to have the doors open, if you like, have our hearts open, have our heads open, have records open so that we can record things appropriately to support our children in a way that makes sense for them, doesn't re-traumatize them, but we're not experts and we recognize that. So we talk about triggers with our young people and often put them in risk assessments, as we should, because we don't want to re-trigger things for them. And we want to be aware, you know, if you're looking at your behaviour support plans and you recognise that, for example, in one of the homes that I've been involved with, one of the young people, if you talk about his mother in a way that he perceives to be negative in any way at all, that can trigger him into becoming really aggressive and violent. We may have views about our young people's parents, but it's not our place to say them to the child, because whatever happens, that's their parent. So it's about when you're doing your behaviour support plans or your risk assessments, you put the triggers in there, but you do it in a sensitive way in order to support the young person rather than to put them down. But do we always understand what the emotional triggers linked with past trauma for them is? So it's looking at the different things that they've experienced that can lead them feeling, I can't do this. And it's the same for ourselves. If you look at some of the things we may have experienced or our staff may have experienced, that working with one young person may trigger feelings for them of things that happened to them when they were a child. So it's about being sure that we're aware of what they are so that we can put the necessary support in. So our triggers can reflect our pain. So if you often get triggered, for example, of the fear of someone leaving, you might still need to heal from abandonment or rejection. And that could be a parent leaving, it could be the death of a family member when you were little and you didn't really understand it. Most feedback feels like criticism. That could be as a result of critical, disapproving caregiver. You often see this in families where parents. I was a social worker for years before, and a LADO before becoming an Ofsted inspector and then leaving and doing this. And I've often seen in families when parents say, oh, I raised them all the same. No, they don't, because very often there is one child where, oh, he's always doing that. And if it wasn't for her, we'd have a nice, calm household. So all the time that child is feeling criticised, disapproved, they don't fit. And so they're trying different ways to actually fit in the family. And that ties in next to feeling unimportant to loved ones. If the caregiver is unavailable or self-focused, again, that comes back to what I was saying about hidden harm. Very often, if a parent has a substance misuse issue, mental health issue, a learning disability, they may not be able to give all of the attention. Do you remember the John Lennon song about, imagine sort of about the parent by giving no love instead of it all? That kind of sums it up in a lot of ways, because very often parents get all caught up in their own thing and they forget the needs of the child that's there. If you get triggered by raised voice or tones or look on faces, again, that comes back to the unpredictable, scary caregiver. Loud noises, sensory overwhelm, chaotic environments. If you're living in a house where there's lots of other people coming in all the time, maybe because they're coming in to drink with a parent or they're involved in substance misuse, they're coming to score or to use, that can be really scary for a little person. Authority, being told what to do. Controlled, couldn't have a voice. You know, the parent runs the house in a very regimented way, or we run the house in a very regimented way. And we're like, you eat at this time and you come home at this time and you go to bed at this time. And that doesn't fit with where the child is. That can trigger them again. Not feeling worthy or good enough. Often had to perform to earn love. You know, have to be a good little boy or girl before mummy or daddy will love you. Worrying someone is upset at you. Again, harsh, punitive caregiver. Or if you do something as a teenager and your parent says, how could you do this to me? Hang on. They're doing it to themselves, not doing it to you, mum. That's your problem. But that is said quite often to our children. Feeling like you're a burden. That ties in again with a child's needs being ignored or shamed. I know of a case where a girl who didn't fit. Mum had 5 daughters, 5 dads, and she was the middle daughter. And mum hated that dad. And she had a really bad relationship with her mum, but she was trying really hard. And when she got to 16 in her GCSE year, she wrote a long letter to her mum to say, look, I do love you. Can you love me? Can we sort this out? And gave it to her, hoping that that would do the thing. What mum did the next time she had all of her friends round for a drink was read this letter out to all of them, and they all sat laughing while the girl was in the doorway. The impact on her was huge. Never felt that she could actually share her feelings again, and she ended up developing some quite severe substance misuse issues because she was trying to block everything out. It just wasn't safe to share. Spending money on yourself. If you're raised in poverty or raised by scarcity mindsets, or we can't afford that, you know, we'll save that until next year, even though the money is there. The reality is a lot of people won't be able to afford things, but it's the way that you deal with it with your children as well. Feeling dismissed or invalidated. And if that happens, you feel you're not allowed, that's as a result of a child feeling they're not allowed to have or show emotion. You know, you can't show you're scared or you're sad because mum or dad might not like that. So these are all triggers that are there very often for our children before they come through the door. So then we get somebody coming through the door who looks like they're ready to take on the world, or in a little ball or sitting in a corner not wanting to talk to anyone. And it's making sure that we can see that there are some of these things that may have happened to them. Remember what I said about instead of seeing you like 6-foot person in front of you, or the person with all the piercings, or, you know, with the sort of attitude, they're coming with the shoulders back, I'll have you kind of thing. Try and see the little child inside of there. And that's who we're going to work with, and that's who we're going to support in order for them to be that big person. Okay, so we're going to get into some of the links that actually come from theory as well now. There are 6 principles of trauma-informed practice. So we've got safety, trust, choice, collaboration, empowerment, and cultural consideration. We mustn't forget the 6th as well. So with safety, we need to ensure that the physical, psychological, and emotional safety of young people and staff, because I'm looking at this for you to use with your staff if need be, to help them make sense of why they sometimes feel the way they do and why you sometimes feel the way you do. So we ensure that people know they're safe, are asking what they need to feel safe, there being reasonable freedom from threat or harm, that we're attempting to prevent re-traumatisation, and we're putting policies, practices, and safeguarding arrangements in place. The reality is we work within a regulated industry, not industry, you know what I mean, a regulated world. And we have the children's homes regulations, and we have supported accommodations regulations, quite rightly, that give us the framework, the recipe, if you like, to do what we're doing. In order to achieve that, to show that we're doing that, and also to provide children with some form of consistency throughout the country, even within our own ethos in our own homes, is that we have these guidelines that we can all work to. And that's where our policies and practices come into place, making sure that we've got those and they tie in with what we're doing and they tie in with regulation. Trustworthiness. In order to ensure for our children and our staff that trustworthiness is evident in what we're doing, that transparency exists in our policies and procedures with the objective of building trust among staff, young people, and the wider community. And we explore this by ensuring that the organisation and staff explaining what they're doing and why, the organisation and staff doing what they say they will do, and expectations are made clear, and the organisation and staff are not overpromising. So, for example, when we have a safeguarding policy, it's really clear in there that if certain things happen, we are going to be passing that on. So if an incident happens, missing happens, a child is injured, we're going to be informing not only the social worker or other professionals involved with the child, but Ofsted as well. That's clear in there that we're going to be doing that. And that we cannot and should not ever keep secrets, because we need to protect the child, and we need to protect potentially other children that may be being impacted by somebody who could have hurt the child. And if we write down we're going to do something, we do it. It's not just, we don't just have policies in place to keep Ofsted happy or to tick a box. We have them in place because this is what we're working to, and this is how we're doing it. Choice. Really, really important for our children to be able to share in decision-making, choice, and goal settings to determine the plan of action they need to heal and move forward. Really important that we're giving them the opportunity to do that. So by doing that, we ensure that young people and staff have a voice in the decision-making process of the organisation and its services. So that's down to us and the way we work. And by decision-making, I don't mean that they decide where we might open another house, or all the time which members of staff are going to be appointed, or the new manager, but they do have a voice in the decoration in their home. They do have a voice in changing rooms if that is possible. if young people are, if we're in the matching process, looking at other young people coming in, how do we do that so that young people feel they have a voice in who may be the new young person coming in? And we listen to the needs and wishes of our young people and staff. We explain our choices clearly and transparently. And we acknowledge that people who have experienced or who are experiencing trauma may feel a lack of safety or control over the course of their life, which can cause difficulties in developing trusting relationships. Going back to what I was saying about if you can't trust your initial caregivers in life and things are impacting on you in that way, why should they automatically trust us? So it's about helping them, empowering them to recognize that they can trust. We're there and that we're going to be trustworthy for them. That choice. Collaboration. It's really important that we all work together. You know the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it does. And the value of staff and young people experience is recognised in overcoming challenges and improving the system as a whole by using formal and informal peer support and mutual self-help. For example, one of the things you can do there, young people's meetings aren't just about choosing the menu for next week. They're not just about talking about what time the Wi-Fi is turned off at night. It can be used as a really good way of actually empowering and supporting our young people to develop relationships with each other so they can get that support from each other if need be. And if we arrange activities, do we try and arrange them that all of our young people together can go so that they can have fun times together? So the organisation asking young people and staff what they need and collaboratively considering how these needs can be met, and focusing on working alongside and actively involving young people in the delivery of services. What's really good with that is I can think of a couple of places from when I was an inspector where young people were involved in staff recruitment, not in reading their CVs or reading their job applications, not like that. But as part of the interview process, a young person would be involved and they would have their own questions and they would ask. That's huge. And that's something that is a really positive thing to be doing if you can. So it's something to be looking at, helping young people really have that voice. Empowerment. Empowerment is vital. And efforts are made to share power and give young people and staff a strong voice in decision-making at both individual and organisational level. And that's by validating feelings and concerns, listening to what a person wants and needs, supporting all to make decisions and take action. Not just, in your team meetings, very often there'll be the one person who does most of the talking. Try to get them to sit back on occasion and listen and allow somebody else's voice to come through, because they may be the voice that actually makes the difference for you. Acknowledging that people who have experienced or are experiencing, again, trauma may feel powerless to control what happens to them, isolated by their experiences, and have feelings of low self-worth. And so the person in the corner in your team meeting may be the one who actually is the voice of reason, the voice you should be listening to, but they're looking at the more powerful people in the team and thinking, they know more than me, I can't say anything. Turn it around, empower them. Cultural consideration. We need to move past cultural stereotypes and biases based on, for example, gender, sexual orientation, age, religion, disability, geography, race, or ethnicity, by offering access to gender-responsive services, leveraging the healing value of traditional cultural connections, incorporating policies, protocols, and processes that are responsive to the needs of individuals served. This one is really quite powerful. I know too often in the past, there is the sort of the cultural stereotype of the loud black woman, and she's out there and she's pushing. And actually, she is just saying what we need to hear and saying what needs to come across. but there's been that attitude that has been around for many, many years that we need to be getting past and encouraging our young people to stand up and do the same. And don't lose sight of the fact that it's really, really important for a lot of our young people to be linking in with what their original culture is. Now, that could be a postcode on a housing estate. It could be the church they want to go to. It could be linking in with a community where they can get the food. I teach English to refugees. And yesterday I was with a group of people from Syria and Kuwait, and we were talking about food and where they're staying, the place they're staying in. The food they're given is really not good. So we were looking at how we could plan a special meal leading up towards Christmas where everybody can eat together. And then the two women behind from Sudan joined in as well. And we're going to be doing dolma. I have no idea how to cook that, so I'm going to be looking up sort of recipes, but they're going to teach me so that we can all do that together, because that food is something that is so huge and is so important. And it's a really good way of them learning English as well, because we're talking about the ingredients in English, the weights and measures, the times, and so on. So looking at what those cultural links are, and it's really important that we do that. So remember what I said earlier about I've put in deliberately lots of different diagrams for you to use depending on which feels the most comfortable for you. So this one looks at equity-centered trauma-informed care. So it's looking at how we do it, how we link that together. So right in the middle, really important for our young people and our staff, is the cultural, historical, gender issues that we've just been talking about. And then around the outside, this is how we do it. This is how we link it in for them. So we recognize the signs and symptoms of trauma. We respond by integrating our knowledge, and we reset and revisit so it's clear for them. Can you see that? I've turned the screen around, but I don't know. It's realizing the impact of trauma and revisit the traumatization. So it's there. Some of you may use it, some of you may not. I've just tried to give you a choice. We need to create a safe environment. That's a given. And I know you all do that anyway. You do that as part of when you're setting your home up. You look at in your locality risk assessment, where is it? What's around there? What needs to be done? You look at in your safer recruitment practices, ensuring that you don't employ somebody who may pose a harm to children. You do that in health and safety in the house, in having fire drills and, potentially window restrictors, that kind of thing. So you do that. But that ties in with safety is fundamental to creating an environment conducive to learning and growth for all, including those who've experienced trauma. If they feel safe, they can start to make sense of what happened to them in their lives and start moving forward. When we feel safe and supported, we're more likely to engage in learning and developing. So strategies for building a physical, virtual, and emotionally safe space include foster a welcoming and inclusive environment using respectful language, set clear rules for attendance in education, as well as behaviour in the home and participation to minimise uncertainty. That's tying in again with what the government are asking for at the moment, tying in with regulation. So it gives them an opportunity. Doesn't have, excuse me, doesn't have to be in a formal school setting, but some kind of education, because it gives them opportunities and choices. And we've got to establish our trustworthiness and transparency. Remember what I was saying back before? That sort of fits in, because they're especially important for anyone with lived experience of trauma, because they may find forming relationships challenging and that impacts their sense of safety, support, and engagement. So when our young people learn that they can trust us and they feel that we're treating them fairly, respectfully, equally, they're more likely to engage because they feel that they can talk to us, they can share what may have happened, they can share what they want to do moving forward. So when you're transparent in your work, either with your staff or with your young people, and with your staff with your young people, they can understand what's expected of them, how they'll be evaluated, and that can reduce anxiety. And it promotes a sense of fairness. Really important for our kids that things are fair. So by creating a safe and transparent environment, you can help them feel more comfortable and secure, which improves their ability to bond, learn, and succeed. And I know you know this, but strategies for applying trust and transparency include maintaining consistency in interactions and response time to build trust. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. Do it every time. You know, don't have that kind of jitterbug approach that can make people feel like, oh, I don't know, is it going to happen or not? Clearly explain expectations. What will be recorded and why? And why it's really important for our young people to understand that things are recorded is because we have to record them. Quite rightly, we don't just record them for Ofsted or our Reg 44 visitor or for a social worker to look at. We record them for the child. We record them for the young person because we are their history. Hopefully, all of us growing up had family members. We had siblings, we had parents, we had extended family who, when we were perhaps going through a hard time, we were 14, 15, and you get older and you can go, what was going on then? Can explain. Our kids don't have that. They have what's written down. They have what's there. So they need to know things are recorded, why we record them, and that they can read them. So that when they do come to read them, it makes sense for them. So we clearly, so we acknowledge our own limitations and mistakes openly. So like if we can't, they're saying, you know, I want to buy a brand new car as soon as I'm 17. We go, we can help you get through your driving test and we'll support you with that, but we can't buy you a car. But we'll find ways where potentially where you can. The reality, we need to be honest and open with them constantly. And it's fostering peer support again. Remember what I said before about that? So peer support is a key principle in fostering safety, trust, and collaboration. It's a flexible relationship-based strategy that enhances community and belonging among everyone. So it's about giving young people the opportunity to make friendships, not just in the home, which is really important, but in education, in activities we may introduce them to at their local church, at the local drama group, if they want to do that. If any of you have read any of Neil Morrissey's writing, he's recently written a really good article in The Guardian about what it was like for him growing up in care when he joined a drama group and how that just opened so many doors for him. And he'd had a huge amount of trauma as a child. It's looking at that. Can we find somewhere where they can have friends? And that's really important for somebody who may struggle with trust and relationship building. If they start to realize that there are good people out there that they can have a laugh with, they can learn with, they can try new things with. So you can do that by enhancing comfort, security, and success, by fostering the empathetic and compassionate relationships your staff have with the young people, you have with them, and you have with your staff. And other strategies that can reinforce that include promoting group work and projects to build peer relationships. As I said earlier, this can include young people's meetings. Get them to do something fun as well. Facilitate sharing of experiences and perspectives, and practice active listening, and to solicit young people's feedback on how to support them best. Ask them what feels best. How do you like to maybe have a key work session? I know quite a few young people who don't want to sit down with you face to face, but go for a drive and they will talk for England on the drive because they're not having to look straight at you. You can't look at them, but by golly, you can get a lot of sharing happening on a car journey. So collaboration and mutuality. Again, this is a fairly obvious one, but I said before, I've repeated this.
Okay. Are you okay?
Can you mute
How's
yourself?
your back?
Hang
I'm
on.
cool. I'm
Can
cool.
somebody, Liam, can you mute everyone?
Thanks, fine.
Sorry, everyone. I have to open the window to mute. Okay, it's happened now. Good.
Yeah, sorry, Maria, I did it.
Thank you. Right, so collaboration and mutuality. I've deliberately repeated the messages in different ways, as I said, so that you can take which bit suits you best within your ethos. So again, looking at that is engaging with the young people to promote collaboration and partnership, shared responsibility. So we're looking at creating this inclusive environment for everybody. It's their home. You know, we don't run the home for us. We may be the ones paying the bills. We may be the ones employing staff, doing all of those things. But we don't live there. Our children live there. Our young people live there. So it's about working together with them so that they can do that. So instead of us constantly doing to and for our young people, we should be doing with. It's the collaboration that's needed, because we de-skill them and we infantilize them if we do to and for all the time. It's doing with. So strategies that can reinforce collaboration and mutuality include: we involve individual decision making, like setting guidelines or choosing incentives. We promote mutual communication between carers and young people, and we facilitate rather than avoid challenging conversations. So, for example, you know, sometimes you can have a situation where a young person and a staff member don't particularly get on. Now, it could be that they see things of themselves in each other that they don't like, which can cause that. It can be that the staff member may, or the young person may have said something that triggered a memory. Rather than avoiding it, let's look at it. What is happening? Why do you feel like this? How can we move this forward? Because that gives the young person so many more skills in how to address a situation that they're dealing with and make sense of maybe what that trigger was, what that trauma was, so that they remember back to the list we were looking at. So that could come back to that. They may have a memory of an overcritical parent, and now they're able to make sense. Okay, yeah, that's where that came from. And that's all right. I'm fine with who I am. I'm fine with how I dress. My facial piercings are mine. You know, I feel good about this, and allow them to feel good about that. So use those opportunities to really make that difference. Sorry, I lost my arrow there for a minute. So it's back to fostering empowerment, voice and choice. And that's what I've just been saying. That's vital for autonomy, agency, and nurturing young people's strengths. So for our young people, or for anybody who has experienced trauma, restoring that control, and by agency, I mean, you know, sense of self, is key. It's so important, because when you're going through traumatic experiences, you are out of control. And that is so terrifying, even as a little person. If you are, say, 6, 7 years old and things are really chaotic around you, you may feel that you have got the ability to run away and hide in a cupboard, or better still, run away and go to grandma or go to auntie or go to cousin, somebody safe that you can run to. If there's nowhere for you to go, all of your control is gone. That's terrifying. So it's about making sure that they know that they're in control, that they can make that difference, that they can move forward. So you can do that by promoting stability, by creating homely environments that encourage your young people to make choices, speak up, develop confidence and competence in their growth. Now, again, you're saying to yourselves, what's she talking about? You know, my home is really nice. I keep it really warm. It's decorated beautifully. Is it homely? If you're really honest with yourself, walk in with different eyes on. Does it feel really homely? Does it feel like you're walking into somebody's home? Because you are. You're walking into your children's home. Or does it feel like you're walking to a workplace where children happen to live? And that can make a big difference in how children feel with where they're living with you and how they can trust you and make sense of the traumas that they experienced as little ones. So, strategies for doing that, for fostering empowerment and voice and choice, is offer activities and incentives to cater for young people's strengths, facilitate young people-led discussions to boost participation, and acknowledge and validate young people's experiences and knowledge. And I say experiences and knowledge because, going back to what I was saying about the cooking dolma, you may have a young person come into your home who is really, really good cook from their culture, and they want to share that with you. Don't just get out a recipe book and say, oh no, it's all right, I can do this, I'll just do this. Listen and learn from them. It gives them that feeling of control again. It gives them, and by control, I don't mean controlling you in a negative way. I mean control of themselves. They can feel powerful. They can feel emboldened. They can feel empowered. Listen to what they like. Listen to what is really there for them. And that could be going on an activity they like. It could be how they do their hair. It could be, some of them, how they're learning to do their makeup. Listen, learn, allow them to be themselves, so that the original trauma that had them thinking it's no good speaking because nobody's going to listen, or if I do speak, somebody's going to hit me or put me in a cupboard or whatever, isn't going to happen because they realize they can move on. And the cultural, historical, and gender issues, again, it's pivotal for fostering equity, inclusion, and social justice. So we appreciate our young people's diverse identities and experience. By doing that, we can create an inclusive, supportive environment. And these considerations are vital because they create a culturally responsive environment. So if somebody comes into the home with a learning disability or a physical disability, we're really good, aren't we, at making sure that adaptations are made in our home so they can meet those. What about if they come in and they're confused about their sexuality? Or they've moved in and they're not sure what their identity is anymore. They thought they belonged here and now they're here. And how does that work? How can we do that, particularly if they experience trauma? By giving them that inclusive world, we're making sure that the trauma can be recognized without being re-traumatized, and we can make sense of that for them. So, strategies for doing that include diverse identities and perspectives in the home. Don't just run it all one way. This is how we've always done it. This is how I want to do it. You know, I'm not saying that any of you do, but some homes that I've been in over the years have been sort of, I can think of one where the manager and nearly all of the staff were ex-forces, and the house was run with military precision, which is really good if you've got young people in there that can cope with that. But if you've got young people coming in who are a bit, you know, I want to do it this way and this doesn't fit, it's really scary because all the time they don't feel they're worthy enough because they can't get places on time. Their clothes aren't as neat and tidy as everybody expects them to be. So it's about looking at that with them. Be aware of and sensitive to young people's cultural, historical, and gender backgrounds. And counter stereotypes and biases with inclusive language and examples. I know you're doing that, but perhaps you don't realize that by doing that and doing it as well as you are doing, you're actually helping combat the impact that trauma has had on our children. It's about being aware of that for yourselves. Again, a different way of looking at it that you can use in, in diagram form, because trauma-informed pedagogy benefits not only those affected by trauma, but it enriches our young people's lives as well as their learning experience in home and at school. So if we can make them feel a bit better about themselves and they've got more confidence and kind of instill in them that desire to learn, that desire to move forward, what we're doing is helping them perhaps to link back in with education and go back in. So this approach emphasizes safety, trust, peer support, collaboration, empowerment, and the recognition against. So all the things we've just been talking about, but in this diagram way, that again, you can lift out and use if you want, and use it in different ways. Okay, the bane of a lot of our lives is recording. So we understand trauma and the impact it's had on us and how we can support our young people. But we also have to record all of our interactions with our young people. And it's really vital we do. But are we careful in how we do that? Remember, our young people could and should read their records. So just think of the following ways of doing this. And this is really, really important so that, again, you're not triggering people, but it makes sense for them. So don't forget young people's strengths. And can we see the young person in what you're writing? Can you see the context of their behaviour in their actions? And don't assume a motive. They may not understand why they're doing what they're doing themselves, because it could be that trauma is buried quite deep. They don't know why they're reacting in the way they are. They don't know what the memory is. They just know what the feeling is. And so they react in that way. And then come on to, is your writing empathic, not subjective or critical? And often we see this, don't we? For example, so is your writing empathic, not subjective or critical? I'll give you an example of that. When I was an Ofsted inspector and in the role that I've been doing over the last 6-7 years, I often read daily recordings to sort of see how people record as young people are coming in and so on. And one of the words I have a problem with is smirk. And, you know, a member of staff will write, I was trying to talk to them about so-and-so and they smirked at me. What on earth does that mean? That's a pejorative word. That's a critical, subjective word. It could be that they smiled nervously. It could be that what I was challenging them about has frightened them. Don't use words like smirk. It's about being really important that we don't use our unconscious bias, our subjectivity in the way we record things. So describe their behavior, but don't ascribe blame. Because if you come back, if a child comes back and reads their records again, and they read all this negative stuff about them, and they already think they're a horrible human being because of their childhood experiences, this will reinforce it for them. It's about not ascribing blame. It's about looking at what it might be. Don't worry, I've got some examples for you if you're thinking, I don't know how to write this. And can you read the hope, your hope for them in what you've written? Can you read what the future may be for them, that there are positivities, especially if, you know, when your staff member has done a key work session or written up an incident and you come to evaluate it, how carefully do you evaluate it? Do you evaluate it in a way that recognizes that this could be as a result of past traumas, that this could be a way of dealing with a trigger, that this could be something that we perhaps need to get more support for our young people in? Can you read the hope? Is it there? Or is it just negativity? Or just black description, you know, boom, all the way down? No, it's not bald. It's not just black and white words. It's what we see. Let's put some colour in there. Let's make it clearer. This is what I meant about things we can look at. Trauma-informed ways of writing about young people. Again, don't worry, you get these slides so you can look at this in more detail. So you're quickly writing up your notes. And this top one, he's befriending dangerous adults, okay? Turn that around. What you could be saying is risky adults have befriended him, and he may remain vulnerable to exploitation whilst he seeks to meet his relational needs. There's your difference. It's not about him potentially doing that. It's about somebody else maybe doing that to him. And because of his vulnerabilities, that's where he's going. Think about it in those ways. This one, she refuses to engage. She doesn't, if you look at it in the other way, she does not feel able to engage right now. And we've not yet identified a way that feels safe for her. Because if she's not engaging, it's something we're doing. She's not ready. She's scared. What else can we be doing? They are a risk to themselves. This is a phrase I've never felt comfortable with. It's like the old, it was a lifestyle choice when young people were being abused. Not a lifestyle choice. They're not a risk to themselves. It's their behaviours appear to demonstrate the challenges they face in feeling and acting safe. Can you see the differences in the ways that we can record? She's putting herself at risk. Her behaviour may indicate that she feels unsafe in her environment. So having a look at these, so you can have a look at some of the things that, the final one there, he refuses to trust anyone. Independence and self-reliance have been important strategies for his safety, so we need to be patient as he leaves, as he learns to trust us. So if somebody, particularly some of our older young people that come in, 15, 16, 17, they come in and live with us, and they've kind of got used to taking care of themselves. They've got used to coping with their own emotion, coping with their own trauma in this way. It's harming them because that's why they're living with you. If they were doing it in a way that was beneficial, they wouldn't be with you, but they're living with us. They're trying to cope with that, and this is how they've learned to do it. We need to get behind that to show them other ways of doing it in a positive way that can move things on for them. But it's getting behind that wall, isn't it? And that's how we do it. So if we always start with their strengths and use language that humanizes for our young people, situate their actions within a wider context, so look at they're shouting back at you, you're trying to sort of say, where have you been? They're shouting back. They're not used to that. Or they think you're going to really have a go at them, potentially smack them, potentially sort of exile them, not have anything to do with them. So have a look at what that feels for them. Don't assume a motive you can't evidence. Back to smirking. Find out, why are they smiling like that? What is it about them? Are you writing with curiosity and empathy? Really, really important that the empathy is there, but also professional curiosity cannot be undervalued. So it's about using that as well. Describe behaviour, but don't blame or pathologize. So you might describe them, I don't know, smashing up the house, turning on all the water taps in the bathroom so that the house is flooded. So you describe what they're doing, but don't, how did they get in that position where they could do that? And don't pathologize. Don't like, oh, it's because they're bonkers or, they're psychopathic or anything like that. I've seen that written in a child's notes. Don't ever write that, that kind of thing. And does your writing express hopefulness for their life? Can we see the little glint? There is a silver lining to every cloud. I know it's an old cliche, but there is. So it's about seeing that little glint for them. So types of boundaries. All of this work then can allow our young people to grow, feel safe, happy, and recognise their strengths to enable them to be happy and fulfilled adults. They know that not only are they allowed to have their own boundaries, but what those boundaries are so that they can be themselves. So we help them develop those boundaries. So again, I'm not going to go through all of these because you can see them, but you can do what you want with this slide, because these are really sort of nice, clear images, if you like, that often young people feel more confident with, and often staff do, when you're trying to help them make sense of how they work with young people in this way. How are you going to put this into practice? It's all well and good us talking like this, but would you like to sort of put your cameras on? And how are you going to put all of this into practice? Are you all still there?
Yes. I think there's many ways we can put this into practice. I think it's important that we understand everything that you've said, really, about how sensitive it is to be a young person in a care home. So I think that's a first point to start off with, is just to try and create an environment, like you said, that you would like to live in yourself and how you would want to be treated as well. And yeah, just be as reflective as possible, as you may make mistakes along the way, but it's important that you understand how to change and how to improve behavior, and yeah, create the best environment for young people to grow and develop within themselves.
Good. Anyone else? I can see a screen down here. A number of people have come in. You've got the same clock on your wall, the tree of life behind you. Yeah. Who's that down there?
Oh, hi. It's we're a group of staff staying in our lounge. I think what
Okay.
is very important in what you said is kind of like the language that we use when we're recording, because sometimes I think it's having to really think about it when you're recording than just the one you said about the smirk thing. I think one could very much say one was guilty of that in so I think it's just being aware. In the moment, you're probably just trying to describe what you see, but thinking about it from the point of view of a child, eventually, or when they become a young adult, looking into their paperwork and seeing that they have been described as somebody who has a smirk on their face when they've been, spoken to about a major thing they've done. I could see the logic in there. So that's kind of the thing that I've taken, that one needs to be very sort of mindful and conscious whilst we're doing our recording. Thank
Yeah.
you. It was a good session.
Thank you. Because that's one of the things with trauma, is that if we use words like smirk, or if take that look off your face. I'm not saying that any of you would say that, but I have heard it said, and I have seen it recorded, where staff have got frustrated. And I'm sure when you do get frustrated, and I understand why it can come out in the recording sometimes, but for somebody who's experienced trauma, that may be what they would, what was said to them when they were a child. Don't look at me like that. Take that look off your face. Why are you being like this? And they don't know, and they can't change their face. This is who they are. And if that's how you feel, how can you then express that? How can they then trust that you will make sense of what their trauma is and be able to help them move forward from that and build relationships? What about, it would be really helpful if you would, if you can, brilliant, there are some faces here. Put more faces on so that I can actually see you as people. At the moment, all I've got is blobs, and it's really hard to know if people are actually there, if you know what I mean. So thank you, all of you coming in. JP, you've got your hand. Jodie.
Yeah, we're I'm struggling to get my camera on for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. Just in relation to that, when something that we have said about the recording is get your other staff member or somebody to read it back as if they are a young person, and sort of then question, challenge the other staff member around how that might be perceived by somebody else or by the young person in 10, 15 years time, just as a bit of thinking into it. And then when we come to look at it as managers, me and Emma, again, we do it and then go back and say, can you find different wording for that, or just think how that might seem in 10 years time. So that seems to work quite well.
That's a really good one. Another one is to read it out loud to yourself. So once you've written it, take a minute to read it out loud to yourself. All staff members, or you do it as managers and then get your staff to, and listen to how it sounds when you read it out. Because often when you do that, you hear what the words would sound like to a child. or to a colleague. I can see the number one. You've got your hand up. Chap with glasses and a beard. Ali, I'll come to you next, but there's somebody who had their hand up first. You're smiling now. You've got your glasses on and a beard and you're smiling. Do you want to unmute yourself? Thank you.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself, but my
That's all right.
touchscreen wasn't working. Sorry, for me, I think coming from a background where I was a team manager in a secure children's home.
All right.
It was very much institutionalized, so it was a case of, you know, kind of educating the staff the difference between the attention needing and attention seeking terminology.
Yeah.
You know, very much it's a case of, oh, they're doing that just because they just want attention, and it was a case of, no, let's actually delve deeper as to why. And it is a case of, you know, that they're attention needing, and let's explore that. So I think for me, it's a case of, as you know, as good as it is to, you know, the recording's important and everything as well, but the education of staff, to kind of give them the tools to delve deeper when they're having those conversations with a young person. Okay, there's this issue, or this is what's happened, but let's look at the reasons why, and then looking at alternative coping strategies and take it from there. And that's why you're going to be able to delve deeper into, you know, the past trauma and lived experiences. I just wanted to put my lip.
No, exactly. You're spot on, because we can get blinded by attention-seeking stroke needing behaviour, can't we? And forget, as I keep saying, the little child inside the fairly big. I used to inspect secures, so I know what it's like, the way that you had to record things differently and the tighter regulations, but that feeling was still there, wasn't it, when you're looking at that child? So I do understand that, and thank you for sharing that. Ali.
Yeah, I've just put a link in the chat. So somebody who really echoes what you've said, Marie, about kind of how important that recording is, and particularly for those in care that then go back and read their notes as an adult. So Rebecca Pierre, I've heard her speak at a conference, Ofsted conference, and she was a child in care and has then gone on to qualify as a social worker, but also campaigns for what her notes looked like and she was really upset when she read some of the things about her that had been written. So she's written a book, but she also has got some YouTube videos, etc. And I think, you know, in terms of, if you guys wanted to go away and kind of do a peer supervision and some training with your staff, she's a video that you could show to people about what that actually feels like when you're a child. So just wanted to add that, really.
Thank you. Chris, is it? CN? Yeah, hi.
Yeah, good morning. Just wanted to sort of share my experience in the process of making our organisations trauma informed, and I think just highlight the importance that it's not just how we work with the children, it's how managers speak to staff, and how they're managed, and it's just not about the children. It's about how we manage staff's trauma and the impact of that, but also organisationally, that it goes from top to bottom or bottom to top. I think, as I say, it's for it to be effective, it's the owners, the CEOs, the directors, etc., have to be aware of trauma-informed practice and be signed up to it. And I think that often gets missed, and there's an expectation that the staff are trauma-informed, but managers and senior managers don't always follow that. And I think it has to be organisationally, and I always preach it's about how I speak to my staff, how I speak to my wife, my children, and other people in the community. I think it's wider, and I think just wanted to share that.
No, you're spot on. That's why I was saying that sort of we've got to look at the impact of everything that is happening with our staff as well as with our children, because all of us, the idea of it going upwards to directors and so on, that's a really good one, because I don't know how sometimes we would get directors, you know, maybe people who, perhaps you can all come up with some ideas, maybe people who've been in the care industry themselves, or those that have never been in the care industry but have bought a company or have opened a company, and they're kind of rolling it downwards without actually understanding. How do you think we encourage then directors and owners of companies to do this kind of training. So that, because managers are very often, those of you that are managers, I've heard over the years, very often you feel like you're in isolation. It can be a very lonely place being a children's home manager, can't it? A supported accommodation manager with a huge amount of responsibility for the building, for your staff, for your children, and answering. But how can we get others to do it? Candice? Yeah? Candice, yeah, there you go. You're on mute. Thanks.
So I also wanted to make a contribution to say that I think going forward, the team should also be educated on the fact that it's okay to actually be upset when a young child is exhibiting certain behaviors or verbally abusing you, and it's okay to talk about it instead of like bottling it up, because I feel that so much of taking in these kinds of abuse and not able to talk about it is what triggers certain responses, especially when interacting with these young children. So I think going forward, that also should be encouraged, where the team is able to actually talk about these things, and so that it also builds them up and helps them to be able to interact with the young children more, and not make these facial expressions and other comments when actually interacting with these young children.
Absolutely. And that's what we were saying, Candice, about the reality is that most of us have had some kind of trauma in our lives. And a lot of people that come into this work do so because they want to give back or they want to make that difference. And sometimes staff haven't dealt with some of their own issues. So if there has been an incident, it's the responsibility of the manager and senior managers to ensure that there is support in place for that staff member, that we do look at whether or not there's any been trauma links for them. And that's why supervision, both individually, group supervision, team meetings for staff are so important, that we give them that opportunity to share that, make sense of it so that they can move forward. Chris, you got your hand.
Yeah, just to share a bit of work that I've done over the last 3 years. So I have an adults company as well that I work for, and I've been working with Hampshire County Council, the ICB for Hampshire and Isle of Wight, and we've written a trauma-informed care concordat, which everyone signs up to, providers, the local authority, which mirrors some of the slides you've written today. But I think for me, that now forms part of our adult commissioning. So when commissioning for adults, there's stuff around being trauma-informed. We've developed a skills audit as a consortium to share. But I think when you talk about how do you get directors and higher echelons involved, it's at that level. It's the commissioning level. And as I say, it's that accountability. And if commissioners want to add it in as part of tenders, etc., then they have to be part of that whole process. And I think we're not seeing it as much in children that we can call that, but I think it will filter through.
Especially as, I hope I'm not sort of throwing some new information in here that you don't know about, especially linked with the fact that we should all hopefully be putting transitional safeguarding into practice now and working more in collaboration, if we can, with adult social care provisions and with adult support systems, substance misuse, probation service and so on, for our young people as they're getting ready to move on out of our homes into sort of, and by adult, we're talking 18-year-olds. Just because you've had your birthday today and you're 18, in the eyes of the law, you're an adult. And so a lot of the supports that you had yesterday have gone because now you're in the adult stage. And Chris Wiltshire did the pilot, didn't they, on transitional safeguarding. So if you've not heard of this before, have a look. You can look it up. York University did one of their research into practice modules on that, and Wiltshire local authority actually did the pilot project on actually trying to make that happen. So that ties in for us, doesn't it? So it's about adult services need to understand trauma-informed practices just as much as children's services do. because just because somebody is 18 or 19 or 25 doesn't mean they've dealt with what happened when they were younger. And that may still be around for them. Any other questions, any other points, anything else you want to raise? Anyone? I must say you've been a really, really good group, even though there's like over 100 of you, only a couple have dropped out, but you know, to have so many people listening, I hope it was of use. You will, the final slide says, if I can find it again now. Here we go. Obviously, the sources for all of the information is here. So you get links to them. And thank you for joining.